Now then, last night the Prime Minister Boris Johnson confirmed that the majority of the remaining COVID restrictions would come to an end in England on Monday the 19th of July.
Well, in addition to ending social distancing rules and reopening venues like nightclubs, people will no longer be legally required to wear face masks, and instead wearing a mask will become a personal choice. So
what does this all mean for you? Well, we're joined now by vaccine expert Professor Beate Kampmann and epidemiologist Professor Tim Spector, who's down the line. Good morning. So let's start with you first of all. So this this is the moment we've been waiting for, really. You know, some are dubbing it Freedom Day, which I know you've got your thoughts and feelings on. How do you feel about this move? Is it the right thing to be doing?
So, you know, the pandemic, unfortunately, isn't a switch that's either on or off. And I think that's something we just need to acknowledge. Because it's not over and we haven't exactly been in prison. However, it is nice to see that we'll have different regulations for travel, for example. And we can talk about the masks a bit. I think there's still things to discuss. And also, we shouldn't see it as something that is then, you know, written in stone. We really need to still continue to be guided by the data rather than dates.
Well, people aren't stupid, although sometimes you think we might have been treated as if we were. But there are a lot of people saying, do you know, I don't feel comfortable in taking my mask off, so don't. So if you feel comfortable keeping your mask on, then keep it on. I want a little bit of freedom. I want to take it off. I can't see people's expressions. It's mentally bothering me. Then take it off. So there are these choices that you can make.
Of course, and I think they can be informed choices. So if you're outside walking in the open space on the road, there's much less need to have a mask on as if you're going to a crowded place, 60,000 in football stadium on the games. That's a different story, right? So I'd still be wearing my mask on public transport if it's peak transitioning time, and I'll still be wearing it in shops, and I'll be more comfortable like that. So, and it protects other people.
Yes, it does. And also the social distancing measures are also being scrapped as well. So not only are you taking your mask off, but you won't be you won't be told to socially distance. But again, is this coming down to common sense?
I think a lot of what we do at the moment should be coming down to common sense and to a personal perception of risk, that you don't just think about yourself, but also that you could be transmitting to other people. And I think we have a collective responsibility here, and hopefully we're mature enough as a nation to not just have to have that regulated by laws, but also have learned from all the data we've had in the last 18 months, right?
And it's interesting, you say all that data, and there has been a lot of data. We can remember doing, 18 months ago, one of the first interviews we did, we were talking about face masks, and we had someone on here who said, makes no difference whatsoever, a face mask doesn't work. And then now we're 18 months down the line, and you find out that multiple studies, main value from wearing face masks is that they block up to 80% of respiratory droplets that spread the virus. A study in China found that in households where they've been confirmed coronavirus cases, mask wearing by all inhabitants reduced transmission by 79%.
Wow.
Aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt, living quarters and working environments leave little room for social distancing. A study found there was a 70% reduced risk of infection among those who used a face covering. So, Tim, this still is a very simple weapon in our armoury, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. And we've got to start thinking about how we use these simple weapons long term as we move into this new phase, really, where we're not going to be locking down and worrying about deaths and hospitalizations, but we are going to have this continuous risk of infection that is important. And the Zoe app, which 1 million people are logging on every day, has also shown that you get 60% protection against infections. And it also showed several 100% protection for healthcare workers who in the early days didn't have, some of them didn't have any masks at all, and they were really, really in a bad way. So just as you wouldn't want your doctor to operate on you or your dentist to operate on you without a mask, I think all of us need to just be considerate of other people when we're going about our lives, when we're very close to people. We don't really want to infect people, because the one thing we're not talking about here is long COVID. Vaccines have broken the link between deaths and infections and hospitalizations, but we're still seeing 1% to 2% of people infected getting long-term symptoms of COVID, which stops them working at 3 months, and things like long-term fatigue. And so if you are infected and you infect someone else, then, you wouldn't want to do that to someone else. So I think all of us have to act responsibly, particularly in crowded places. And I'm a little concerned about public transport. I mean, going around on the tube in London, for example, without a mask would seem to be really daft. And I think while we've still got such high numbers, 1 in 200 or 300 people infected, it means that we really should stay vigilant for longer. But overall, I am encouraged, I'm very happy that we're in this position, particularly personal liberty to move around, see people, I can visit my mother in a care home much more easily. All these things are important, meeting friends, etc. But I'm very happy that I haven't had a cold in the last 18 months.
No, we were saying that as well. There's a lot of things that the sniffles considerably reduced, although we know we've been warned about a risk of a major flu epidemic later on in the year. But Sajid Javid this morning said we can't live in a world where the only thing we are thinking about is COVID. And that is where we tend to have found ourselves. And there are, I think, 7 million people who haven't gone forward for other treatments, haven't gone to see their doctor.
Absolutely.
So that in itself is a catastrophe. There, on the other side of things, you've got various people, including, I think, the leader of the opposition, saying it's too early, it's too early.
Yeah, I guess, everything is a balance. I don't make the policy. I've looked at the effect that the vaccines had, and I think it's really important that we rush through as many of the second doses as possible now. And it would be nice to see that accelerated, because when I see the numbers, I think we could probably do a bit better on that, because only the second dose will give us a better protection. And then, it is a balance, but I think, there are reasons to believe that we have broken the link, and we need to monitor. And, Boris mentioned, I think the last part of his presentation yesterday, that we need to keep on monitoring the data. I've put that right at the top of the agenda, because we need to keep the surveillance going. We need to have people access to testing very, very easily. And we need to ask people to be careful also if they're exposing vulnerable people.
Tim, can I ask you about the expected plans from the government? And these are things like allowing double-jabbed holidaymakers to skip quarantine from amber-listed countries, or the other issue of not having to isolate if pinged on the Test and Trace app, but you'd have to sort of take daily tests instead. What do you think about those moves?
I think really important, because we're moving into this next phase, and we have to realise that contact tracing really doesn't have much of a role in this new phase where most people are vaccinated, and it doesn't make sense. The current travel restrictions don't make sense when people are vaccinated, and the risk of serious infection or transmission is very much lower. So I do welcome these changes to travel. They really should go straight away as far as I'm concerned, and we should, but people should be sensible. And I think I heard Ryanair is still going to make people wear masks on flights, which I think is very sensible. So I think it's trying to get a more common sense approach to this, and also realise that you didn't mention schools, but I think a lot of kids are losing education for no good reason, because they've been in contact with someone who might have got the disease. And I think we need to just use simple common sense, testing people when they have symptoms, and only then really make sure they exclude people. But that's what I think is the next phase now, as we move away from this contact tracing era. We've got plenty of lateral flow tests around. If people feel unwell, they get cold-like symptoms, which we are seeing on the Zoe app is the most common. The simple advice is to stay at home until your symptoms get better, have a lateral flow test, and if that's positive, get yourself checked out with a PCR test. And if people just act responsibly, we can keep this, without getting out of control, and really start to live with it.
There are, Beate, there are things that we've sort of got used to now, which may be a good thing, or if you want to get out of that, the pattern, it'll take a little bit of time. Somebody shook my hand yesterday. They just put my hand out, and I reached out and shook the hand. I think it might have been the first time I've shaken someone's hand in a very long time. And immediately, all the alarm bells went off in my head. And I'm, starting to think, I'm going to have to wash my hands. I'm going to have to wash my hands. That's not such a bad thing. No. I don't want to balk when someone comes to hug me, though, because I think we need that contact.
Yeah.
And at the same time, people are used to not working working in their offices. And now they're thinking, well, maybe I might go back for 2 days a week. So it's getting used to these changes.
I think so. I think there's been an enormous change in practice, and we should keep the good practices, and we should, there's nothing wrong with washing your hands when you come home from shopping, right? It might not just protect us against coronavirus, it might protect us against flu, RSV, all sorts of other infections, even bacteria. So I think why drop something that isn't actually making such a negative impact on our lives? And hug the people that you know that you're close to, but you might not need to hug, every stranger that you see in the road, because you don't know where these people have been. If they wear a mask, then maybe a bit easier to hug them, right?
Yeah.
Common sense. Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lovely to have you in the studio as well.
Yeah, it really is.
We've talked a lot over the past
I know.
year or so.
It makes a big difference to actually see you in person.
Yeah.
I'm delighted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beate. Right, lots of people are excited about Freedom Day on the line. Is it a good idea to call it Freedom Day?
I think it's terrible.
Is it?
I mean, I think it makes us feel as if we've been in prison. Have you felt in prison? No.
At times.
At times. Well,
I mean, at times,
yeah. But I mean, compared to,
I don't like the word Freedom Day either.
No,
anyway.
I think it gives you this feeling of something is definitely finished when it's not.
And
I think it sets all the wrong signals.
Well, but it happened in the first time round, and I just think, and we actually said, they called it Freedom Day first time round, and it's like setting yourself up for a fall.
Absolutely.
Well, exactly.
You only get disappointed.
Exactly. And also, I think we need to be prepared that things might have to be staged back a bit. If you look at Israel, they're just reintroducing the masks and then the green passports. So let's not pretend that this business is finished. Let's just try and negotiate how we live with a virus that is going to be with us for a very long time.